The first time I saw the citation taped to my front door, I knew my peaceful life in Maple Ridge, Colorado was about to become a bureaucratic nightmare. I'm Yates Thompson, and I've lived in this subdivision for 3 years without a single problem until Patricia Morrison became the new HOA president. The notice was printed on expensive cream-colored cardstock with the association's embossed logo at the top, informing me that my roof snow rake violated the community's approved equipment standards and needed to be removed from my property within 48 hours or I'd face a $500 fine. Standing on my front porch in the January cold, I read the notice 3 times, certain I was missing something. A snow rake. They were complaining about a snow rake. The yellow plastic tool was leaning against the side of my garage, exactly where I'd left it after clearing my roof the previous weekend. I'd bought it at the hardware store specifically because we'd had record snowfall this winter, and the weight was starting to concern me. My neighbor, Dennis Warren, was shoveling his driveway when I walked over with the notice in hand. "Did you get one of these?" I asked. He straightened up, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the temperature being in the teens. "One of what?" "An HOA violation notice about a snow rake." Dennis laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Oh yeah, got mine yesterday. Apparently, Patricia decided that any outdoor equipment visible from the street needs to be on a pre-approved list. She's been going around with her little camera, documenting everything." "That's insane." "It's a snow rake. I need it to keep my roof from collapsing." "Try telling her that. I went to the emergency board meeting last week when she first proposed this. She said the neighborhood was starting to look cluttered and low class with everyone's winter equipment out. She specifically mentioned your rake, actually. Said it was bright yellow and visible from her morning walk route." I looked back at my house. Patricia lived 4 streets over. She'd have to deliberately walk out of her way to pass by my place. Can she even do this? I mean, safety equipment. Dennis shrugged. "According to her interpretation of the covenants, the board has broad authority to maintain neighborhood aesthetics." She pushed through the vote 3-2. The Hendersons and Barbara Chen voted against it, but Patricia had Steve Cramden and that new guy, what's-his-name, Jeremy, on her side. "This is ridiculous. Welcome to the new Maple Ridge. Good luck, man. I'm just putting everything in my garage and hoping my roof holds. We're supposed to get another foot tonight." I went back inside and found my copy of the HOA covenants and restrictions. The document was 73 pages of dense legal language, but I'd read it thoroughly before buying the house. Nothing in there specifically prohibited snow rakes or mentioned seasonal safety equipment. There was a vague section about maintaining property appearance and another about the board's authority to create reasonable rules, but this seemed like a stretch. The snow started falling around 7 that evening. By the time I went to bed, there were already 4 inches of fresh powder on top of the 18 inches from the previous week. I lay awake thinking about the weight accumulating on my roof. My house was a 2-story colonial with a fairly steep pitch, but even steep roofs have limits. Building codes in Colorado require roofs to handle significant snow loads, but we were approaching historical levels. The next morning, I called the HOA management office. A bored-sounding woman named Tracy answered. "I received a violation notice about a snow rake," I said. "I'd like to dispute it. You'll need to submit a written appeal to the board. Next meeting is February 15th. That's 3 weeks away. The notice says I have 48 hours. "That's correct. If you don't comply within 48 hours, the fine is assessed. The appeal is about whether the violation itself is valid, but that doesn't stop the enforcement timeline. So I'd have to pay a $500 fine, wait 3 weeks, appeal, and maybe get it back." "Potentially. If the board rules in your favor, this is about safety equipment, my roof could collapse. Sir, I just work here. I don't make the rules. You can submit your appeal in writing if you want. I hung up and immediately started drafting an email to the board. I kept it professional, explaining that the snow rake was essential safety equipment, that removing it would put my property at risk, and that the rules seemed unreasonable given the current weather conditions. I included links to articles about roof collapse risks and excerpted sections from our insurance policy about homeowner responsibilities for snow removal. The response came 6 hours later from Patricia's personal email address. Dear Mr. Thompson, your concerns are noted but do not supersede the board's authority to maintain community standards. The approved equipment list is available on the HOA website, and several acceptable storage solutions for seasonal items are detailed there. If you need to use the rake, you may store it in your garage between uses. Leaving it visible from the street remains a violation. The 48-hour deadline stands. Regards, Patricia Morrison, HOA President. I checked the HOA website. The approved equipment list hadn't existed until 5 days ago, according to the page's metadata. The storage solutions Patricia mentioned were expensive garage organization systems from specific brands. The cheapest option was $400. That evening, I moved the snow rake into my garage. I didn't have a choice, not really. $500 was more than I wanted to waste on a stupid power play, but my garage was packed with my car, my workbench, boxes of seasonal decorations, and all the other accumulation of daily life. To get the rake out, I'd need to move my car to the driveway, navigate through the narrow path between storage shelves, and reverse the whole process to put it back. What should take 30 seconds would become a 15-minute ordeal. The snow kept falling. By the third day, we had 32 inches total. My neighbors were out with their roof rakes, the ones who'd also complied with Patricia's new rule, doing the same awkward garage shuffle I was doing. Dennis wasn't bothering anymore. I saw his rake sitting inside his garage door, but he wasn't using it. It's not worth the hassle, he told me when I asked. I'm just hoping for the best. On the fourth day, I woke up to a cracking sound. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought it was my roof, but the noise was coming from outside. I threw on clothes and ran out to find several neighbors already gathered on the street, looking up at the massive oak tree in the common area at the end of our cul-de-sac. The tree was Patricia's pride and joy, one of the oldest in the subdivision. She'd fought to have it designated as a heritage tree by the HOA, which meant it got special maintenance and protection. The neighborhood paid extra in our dues specifically for this tree's care. Patricia organized an annual autumn photo shoot under it and had led the campaign to install decorative lighting around its base. A major branch had split from the trunk, unable to bear the weight of the accumulated snow. It was hanging at a dangerous angle, still partially attached, but clearly dead. The crack in the trunk was visible even from the street, a dark wound in the bark that wept sap. Patricia arrived minutes later, still in her bathrobe, her face pale. Oh no, no, the oak tree, my oak tree. She pulled out her phone and started making calls. Within an hour, an emergency tree service was on site. The crew assessed the damage while Patricia hovered, wringing her hands. We can remove the broken branch, the crew chief said, but that crack in the main trunk is serious. The tree took structural damage. We'll need to monitor it, but there's a good chance it won't survive. Can't you fix it? Brace it or something? Madam, trees don't work that way. The wood fibers are torn. Even if we cable the remaining branches and fill the crack, the tree is compromised. The next major snow load, it could split completely, and it's right next to the street here. If it fails, it could hit a house or a car or a person. Patricia looked like she might cry. This tree is over 80 years old. Should have cleared the snow off it, the crew chief said with a shrug. We've been telling people all week. This much accumulation, you need to help the trees along, especially the old ones with big horizontal branches. After they left, having removed the broken branch and leaving the wounded tree standing like a monument to neglect, Patricia stood in the street staring at it. I felt a twinge of something, not quite sympathy but not satisfaction either. I hadn't wished harm on the tree. But I'd also been prevented from protecting my own property while the HOA's precious oak went unattended. Dennis walked over to stand next to me. Ironic, isn't it? What is? She banned our snow rakes for being unsightly, but nobody thought to clear the snow off the tree. The common areas are the HOA's responsibility, not individual owners. Bet she's wishing someone had an ugly yellow rake handy. The thought hadn't occurred to me, but Dennis was right. The HOA maintained the common areas, including the landscaping. That tree was their responsibility. They could have had someone clear it, could have rented equipment, could have done anything. Instead, they'd been too focused on citations and compliance. Over the next week, more snow fell. I dutifully retrieved my rake from the garage every few days, cleared my roof and put it back. My lower back started aching from all the unnecessary lifting and moving. Meanwhile, Patricia had called an emergency board meeting to discuss the tree. The meeting was open to homeowners, so I attended. The community center was packed, mostly with people who loved that tree. Patricia had brought poster-sized photos of it through the seasons, which she displayed on easels around the room. This tree is an irreplaceable part of our community, she began. It was here before any of our homes, before this subdivision existed. It's a living connection to the history of Maple Ridge. The damage it sustained during the recent snowstorm is devastating, and I'm proposing we allocate emergency funds for every possible treatment to save it. Barbara Chen, one of the board members who'd voted against the equipment rule, raised her hand. Patricia, the tree service told you it's likely beyond saving. They recommended removal before it becomes a hazard. They said there was a chance. We have to try. The quote you got for treatment is $12,000. That's a significant portion of our reserve fund. It's worth it. Steve Cramden, one of Patricia's allies, nodded. I agree. That tree is a landmark. The Hendersons, Richard and Mary, who'd also opposed the equipment rule, looked skeptical. Richard spoke up. I'm not against trying to save the tree, but I am concerned about spending that much money on something the experts say probably won't work, especially when we have other pressing issues. Like what? Patricia's tone was sharp. Like the fact that several homeowners are now at increased risk of roof damage because they can't easily access their snow removal equipment. The room got very quiet. Patricia's face flushed. That is completely unrelated, is it? The tree sustained damage from snow weight. Several people here have expressed concerns about the same issue with their roofs. You made it significantly harder to address that safety issue. The equipment rule is about maintaining standards. It's about control, Mary Henderson said quietly. And it's putting people at risk. The meeting deteriorated from there. Patricia called for a vote on the tree treatment funding. It passed 3-2, the same split as the equipment vote. The Henderson and Barbara voted against, but they were outnumbered. As people filed out, I found myself walking next to Barbara. She was a retired civil engineer, sharp and no nonsense. This is going to blow up, she said to me. Mark my words. The tree situation, all of it. Patricia's been overreaching since she took over. The equipment rule, the new landscaping requirements, the parking restrictions. She's treating the HOA like her personal fiefdom. People are getting fed up. Can't she be removed? Not easily. The bylaws require a vote of the membership, and you need 65% to remove a board member. She's got enough support, mostly from people who don't pay attention or who like the idea of strict rules. But she's building up resentment. More snow came. Another 8 inches, then 6 more. I was clearing my roof every 3 days now, each time cursing the elaborate dance required to access my garage-bound rake. My neighbors were doing the same, or they'd given up entirely. The oak tree stood wounded in the common area, now surrounded by caution tape and orange cones. Patricia had arranged for the expensive treatments, which involved injections of some sort of tree medicine, cable supports for the remaining major branches, and a protective wrap for the damaged trunk. Then, the January bills came. Our HOA dues had increased by $37 per month. The accompanying letter explained that the emergency tree treatment and increased snow removal costs for the common areas had necessitated a special assessment. The increase would remain in effect for 12 months to replenish the reserve fund. My phone started ringing that evening. Dennis was first. Are you seeing this? An extra $444 a year because Patricia wanted to save that tree. I'm looking at it now. People are losing their minds. The community Facebook page is exploding. I checked the page. He wasn't exaggerating. Dozens of posts, most angry, some furious. The common theme was that the tree should have been removed rather than treated, and the money should have been saved. Several people pointed out that the tree service had said treatment probably wouldn't work anyway. Patricia responded with a long post about community values, historical preservation, and the importance of maintaining Maple Ridge's character. It didn't help. The comments grew more heated. 2 days later, I received another citation. This one was about my trash cans. According to the notice, they were visible from the street for more than 12 hours after collection, which violated a rule I'd never heard of because it had been passed at the emergency meeting I'd attended, buried in the consent agenda items that were approved without discussion. The fine was $250. I'd been at work when the trash was collected. I always brought the cans in when I got home, usually around 6 in the evening. Collection was at 7 in the morning. That was 11 hours. Apparently, the new rule specified 10 hours maximum. When I called the management office, Tracy sounded tired. Sir, the rule was properly passed and posted on the website. You're responsible for knowing the rules. I was at the meeting where this passed. Nobody discussed it. It was in the consent agenda, which nobody reads because it's supposed to be routine items. I don't make the rules, Mr. Thompson. I paid the fine. I didn't have the energy to fight it, and missing another day of work for a hearing wasn't worth it. But I was angry now, genuinely angry in a way I hadn't been before. The oak tree was dying. Despite the expensive treatments, it was clearly declining. The remaining leaves from the previous autumn, which had clung to the branches through the winter as dead oak leaves do, were falling. The bark around the wound was discoloring. The tree service came back for a follow-up assessment and confirmed what everyone already knew. It's not responding to treatment, the crew chief told Patricia during a visit I happened to witness while walking my dog. The damage was too severe. I'm sorry, but we need to remove it before spring. In its current state, with the structural damage, a strong wind could bring it down. Patricia looked devastated. There's nothing else we can try, madam. You've already done everything that could be done. Sometimes trees just can't be saved. The good news is you can plant a new one. In 50 or 60 years, it'll be a beautiful, mature oak. 50 or 60 years, I'll be dead. Yes, madam, probably so. The tree removal was scheduled for March, after the snow melted enough to get the heavy equipment in safely. The cost was another $8,000, which meant another special assessment. The February bills announced an additional $22 per month increase. The community meeting that month was packed with angry homeowners. I sat in the back and watched as person after person stood up to criticize the board's handling of the tree situation. "We're paying over $60 a month more than we were 4 months ago," one man said. "For a tree that's being cut down anyway. This is insane." Patricia tried to maintain control. "We did everything we could. The tree was an important part of our community." "It was a tree," someone else shouted. "And now it's a dead tree that cost us $20,000. If the previous board had been maintaining it properly, clearing the snow, maybe this wouldn't have happened." Barbara Chen stood up. "Patricia, the previous board, which I was part of, had the common areas cleared regularly. We had a contract with a landscaping company. You terminated that contract in November because you said it was too expensive." "It was too expensive. We were overpaying. We were paying market rates. You wanted to cut costs, so you went with the cheapest option. The new company does the bare minimum." They didn't clear any of the decorative trees, just the sidewalks. The tree had survived many winters before without special snow clearing. Not with this much accumulation. The tree service told us that at the time. You have the report. Patricia's face was red. "I don't appreciate being attacked. And we don't appreciate being charged extra because of your poor decisions," Richard Henderson said. "I'm calling for a vote of no confidence." The room erupted in applause. Patricia banged her gavel, but people were standing now, shouting. Steve Cramden and Jeremy, Patricia's allies, looked uncomfortable. The meeting dissolved into chaos. That night, someone started a petition to remove Patricia from the board. By morning, it had 200 signatures. Our subdivision had 412 homes. The 65% threshold would require 268 votes. It was going to be close. Meanwhile, I was dealing with my own situation. Another citation arrived, this time about the color of my front door. I'd painted it 3 years ago, before Patricia's tenure. A nice shade of forest green that I'd thought complemented the house's cream siding. According to the new citation, the color wasn't on the approved palette. The approved palette, I discovered, had been updated 6 weeks ago. Forest green was gone. The new greens were sage, moss, and hunter. My green was apparently too blue-toned. The fine for an unapproved door color was $1,000, plus I had to repaint within 30 days. I'd had enough. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Her name was Sarah Ortiz, and she specialized in HOA disputes. Her office was in Boulder, about 40 minutes from Maple Ridge. "Tell me everything," she said when I arrived for the consultation. I laid it all out. The snow rake issue, the escalating fines, the new rules appearing constantly, the trash can timing, the door color. I showed her every citation, every email exchange, every payment receipt. Sarah listened, taking notes on a legal pad. "How long has Patricia Morrison been president?" she asked. 7 months. "And how many rules has she implemented?" I pulled up the HOA website on my phone and counted. 23 new rules or rule modifications. In 7 months. That's aggressive. And you said several of these were passed in consent agendas without discussion. At least 8 of them. That's potentially problematic. Colorado HOA law requires reasonable notice and opportunity for homeowner input on rule changes. Burying substantive changes in consent agendas could violate that requirement. "What does your governing document say about rule-making procedures?" I showed her the relevant section of the covenants. She read it carefully. This requires the board to provide notice of proposed rule changes at least 2 weeks before a vote, and homeowners must have the opportunity to comment. Were you given notice before the equipment rule passed? No. It was proposed and voted on in the same meeting. That's a violation. What about the door color palette change? I didn't hear about it until I got the citation. Sarah sat back in her chair. Mr. Thompson, I think you have a strong case that the HOA is not following its own procedures. The question is what you want to do about it. We could challenge the specific violations, or we could go broader and challenge the board's authority to have implemented these rules at all. What would you recommend? Honestly, wait and see if the recall petition succeeds. If Patricia is removed, a new board might reverse these rules voluntarily. Legal action is expensive and time-consuming. But if the recall fails, or if she retaliates against you for supporting it, then we go to court. What about the fines I've already paid? We can potentially recover those if we prove the rules were invalid. Keep every receipt, every communication, every citation. Document everything. I left her office feeling slightly better. At least I had a plan, or the beginning of one. The petition drive continued through February. Patricia fought back, sending letters to homeowners explaining her vision for Maple Ridge, emphasizing property values and community standards. She organized a counter-petition supporting her leadership. The subdivision was splitting into factions. The snow finally stopped in mid-February. We'd had 63 inches total over 6 weeks, one of the heaviest winters on record. My roof had held, thanks to my diligent clearing, despite the hassle. Several neighbors weren't so lucky. Dennis had a leak in his living room ceiling from ice damming. Another neighbor 3 streets over had actual structural damage that required emergency repairs. The oak tree stood dead in the common area, a skeletal reminder of the winter's damage. The orange cones and caution tape remained. In early March, the recall vote was scheduled. Every homeowner received a ballot in the mail, along with statements from both sides. Patricia's statement was a full-page letter about her accomplishments, her vision, and the importance of maintaining standards. The recall organizers submitted a statement listing the 23 new rules, the special assessments, and the tree debacle. I voted to recall her. So did Dennis, the Hendersons, Barbara Chen, and many others I talked to. But I wasn't sure it would be enough. The ballots were counted at a special meeting on March 15th. The community center was packed beyond capacity, with people standing along the walls. An independent accounting firm had been hired to tabulate the votes, and they worked in a side room while we waited. The tension was palpable. Patricia sat at the board table, her face composed but her hands clenched. Steve Cramden and Jeremy flanked her. Barbara and the Hendersons sat at the opposite end. After 90 minutes, the accountants emerged. The senior partner approached the podium. Of the 412 eligible voters, 379 ballots were submitted. To recall Patricia Morrison from the board requires approval by 65% of eligible voters, which would be 268 votes. The vote total is 271 in favor of recall, 108 opposed. The room erupted. Patricia's face went white. People were cheering, hugging, some literally jumping up and down. Patricia stood, grabbed her purse, and walked out without a word. Steve and Jeremy followed, looking shell-shocked. Barbara Chen called the meeting to order. In light of the recall vote, the board now consists of myself, Richard Henderson, and Mary Henderson. We need to appoint 2 new members to fill the vacancies. I'd like to nominate Dennis Warren and Yates Thompson if they're willing. My stomach dropped. Dennis caught my eye and shrugged. We both stood. "I'll serve," Dennis said. "So will I. I heard myself say. The vote was unanimous. Just like that, I was on the HOA board. Our first action was to schedule an emergency meeting for the following week to review all of Patricia's rule changes. In the meantime, Barbara suspended enforcement of any rules that had been passed in the last 7 months, pending review. The relief was immediate. People pulled their snow rakes back out of their garages, not that we needed them anymore. Trash cans stayed out a little longer. Someone 3 streets over repainted their door back to the color they'd had before. The emergency board meeting lasted 4 hours. We went through every rule Patricia had implemented, one by one, discussing whether it served a legitimate purpose or was arbitrary. The equipment rule was the first to go. Unanimous vote to repeal. The trash can timing rule was modified to 24 hours, which seemed more reasonable. The door color palette was expanded to include any color that coordinated with the house and didn't clash with neighboring properties. Subjective, but better than a restrictive list. By the end of the meeting, we'd repealed 17 rules and modified 6. The HOA bylaws still had standards, but they were reasonable standards focused on actual property maintenance rather than aesthetic micromanagement. The oak tree was removed the following week. It took 2 days and a crane. Watching it come down piece by piece was oddly sad, even though I'd resented what it represented. The tree itself had done nothing wrong. It was old and beautiful, and it died because nobody protected it when it needed protection. After the removal, a wide stump remained. Barbara arranged for it to be ground down, and the area reseeded with grass. Several homeowners suggested planting a new tree, but there wasn't enthusiasm for spending more money. The tree fund had already cost too much. Over the next few weeks, things slowly returned to normal. The special assessments ended, and our monthly dues dropped back to the original rate. The management company, at our direction, sent refund checks to everyone who'd been fined under the now repealed rules. I got back $750. Dennis and I settled into our roles on the board. It wasn't exciting work, mostly reviewing landscaping contracts and maintenance schedules, but it felt good to be part of keeping things fair and reasonable. Patricia disappeared from neighborhood life. I saw her occasionally, leaving early in the morning or returning late at night, but she didn't attend community events or board meetings anymore. Her house went up for sale in April. One evening in May, I was watering my front garden when a car pulled up. Sarah Ortiz, the lawyer I'd consulted, stepped out. "Mr. Thompson, I wanted to check in. I heard about the recall vote. Congratulations." "Thank you. I guess we won't be needing your services after all." "Actually, that's why I'm here. I've been retained by several homeowners to file a lawsuit against Patricia Morrison personally." "For what?" "Breach of fiduciary duty, among other things. The board has a legal obligation to act in the best interests of the community. There's evidence that Patricia was receiving kickbacks from the garage organization company she was promoting, the one on her approved equipment list. That's fraud." My mouth fell open. "Kickbacks?" A whistleblower came forward, someone who worked for the management company. Patricia had a deal where she got 20% of any sales generated through HOA referrals. The company in question is out of Denver, and they've been involved in similar schemes with other HOAs. So she was profiting from the rules she was enforcing. Exactly. That's illegal. The homeowners who bought those systems based on her recommendations have particularly strong claims, but everyone who paid fines under rules she implemented while receiving personal benefit potentially has a claim too. What happens now? We file the lawsuit. It'll take time, but I'm confident we'll win. I thought you'd want to know given everything you went through. She left me her card and drove away. I stood in my yard, hose in hand, processing the information. Patricia hadn't just been power-hungry or overzealous. She'd been corrupt, using her position for personal profit. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later. 15 homeowners were plaintiffs, including Dennis and me. The local news picked up the story, running a piece about HOA corruption in Colorado suburbs. Patricia's house sold quickly after that, probably to get ahead of any judgments. The legal process crawled forward through summer and fall. Discovery revealed the full extent of Patricia's scheme. She'd made over $12,000 from the garage system referrals alone. There were other arrangements, too, with landscaping companies and paint suppliers, all giving her cuts in exchange for being on approved lists. The case settled in November. Patricia agreed to pay restitution to everyone who'd purchased products from her preferred vendors and to all homeowners who'd paid fines under the rules she'd implemented. She also agreed to never serve on an HOA board again. The total settlement was $87,000. My share was $3,200, which covered the fines I'd paid plus compensation for the stress and hassle. It wasn't life-changing money, but it felt like justice. December brought snow again, though not as much as the previous year. I kept my rake leaning against the garage, bright yellow and visible from the street. Nobody complained. When the accumulation got heavy, I pulled it down and cleared my roof, the whole process taking 30 seconds like it should. The oak tree was gone, replaced by level ground and grass. Someone planted bulbs there in the fall, daffodils and crocuses that would bloom in spring. It wasn't a majestic old oak, but it was something hopeful, something looking forward. At the December board meeting, we reviewed the year's events and discussed plans for the next year. Standard maintenance, reasonable rules, fair enforcement. Nothing dramatic or newsworthy, which was exactly how it should be. Walking home after the meeting, I passed the spot where the oak had stood. The December night was clear and cold, stars brilliant in the dark sky. I thought about that tree, about the weight it couldn't bear, about the preventable tragedy of its fall. There was a lesson in that, I thought. About protection, about priorities, about the difference between what matters and what merely looks good. Patricia had been so focused on appearances, on control, on her vision of a perfect community, that she'd lost sight of actual community needs. And she'd been corrupt on top of it, using her position for profit. The tree had paid the price for her negligence, but at least the neighborhood hadn't. We'd corrected course, removed the problem, and restored some sanity to our little corner of Maple Ridge, Colorado. My front door, still forest green, welcomed me home. Inside, my roof was solid overhead, protected through the winter by that ugly yellow rake that had started everything. Sometimes the practical things matter most, even if they aren't pretty. Sometimes safety matters more than appearance. Sometimes you have to let something crack under its own weight before people understand what went wrong. I made coffee and sat by the window, looking out at the neighborhood. Lights glowed in windows up and down the street. Somewhere, someone was probably violating some minor rule or another. A trash can left out too long, a lawn decoration not quite to code, paint that was slightly off the approved palette, and nobody cared. Because we'd learned what happened when you cared too much about the wrong things. We'd seen the tree fall, heard it crack, watched it die. We'd paid the price in money and stress and neighborhood division. The lesson had been expensive, but we'd learned it, and that was worth something. Maybe everything. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady. I'd clear my roof in the morning, rake in hand, taking care of what needed taking care of. No fines, no citations, no elaborate garage shuffle. Just a homeowner maintaining his property, keeping his roof safe, living in a community that had finally remembered what community actually means. The coffee was warm in my hands. The night was quiet. And somewhere, 4 streets away, Patricia Morrison's old house stood dark and empty, waiting for new owners who would never know the drama that had unfolded in their peaceful subdivision. The snow accumulated on roofs throughout Maple Ridge. But this time, everyone had their rakes ready, accessible, and allowed. This time, we'd learned. This time, we'd protect what needed protecting and let go of what needed letting go. The oak tree was gone, split by weight it shouldn't have had to bear. But the neighborhood survived. We survived. And that was what mattered in the end. I finished my coffee and went to bed, the snow still falling outside, the weight of it meaning nothing because I was ready. We all were. Finally, after everything, we were ready.